beware of your tendencies. Your character is your destiny, meaning that who we are and the way we're constructed. Now, by character, I don't mean just morals and ethics, good guy, good lady, bad lady. It's not all moral. There's other aspects of our makeup, our character, that tend to operate in, here's the word, characteristic ways. See, when you watch a movie, it has different characters. Now, all of those characters could be people of good character. If we only see character as meaning moral or ethics, moral character or ethical character, it's more than that. That's foundational. But character is the formulation of the construction of who we are. Okay. So you watch this character in a movie, well, you kind of know how that character is going to behave in the next scene or in the next act or through the arc of the movie. Sometimes there's a character arc where people go through character transformation and changes, but it's about who they are characteristically. Now, we are like that, and you can pretty much expect somebody to be the same person tomorrow that they were yesterday over a period of time, because we learn what they're like and what their tendencies and patterns are. Okay. My wife and I can go to dinner. I can guarantee you what she's going to order is going to look like. Most of the time, she has a tendency to get something very healthy and leafy and green of varieties. She's going to have a couple of other healthy, great veggie choices. She's going to have a healthy piece of protein in there. And somebody across the table is going to look very different than that when we got the triple-decker animal-style cow that's still breathing with French fries sticking out of its ears, because that's pretty much what you can expect that person to be ordering. I'm not poking any, fingers at anybody on camera right now, but we can tend to kind of expect it. One of my favorite stories, I think I put this in a book or two. Tori and I were down in South Louisiana one time, where there's just rural roads and, going through the swamps 60 miles north or south of New Orleans, down in the bayous. And so we were going to visit some friends who never had been there, and they gave us the address. But it's kind of like, let's just say it's not the most, marked system of freeways down in this backwater place. So anyway, we're wondering, we're kind of turned around. We don't not quite know if we're there. So I pull in this gas station, and I go in and ask the guy, "Can you tell me where, how to get to blah blah blah?" And he says, "Yeah, it's pretty easy. You just going down the road. It'll be be a few miles, and you'll see a German Shepherd lying in the grass." Right there, it looks like a corner, and right where that German Shepherd's lying in the grass, you turn right. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Seriously? That's your directions?" I go, "What if the German Shepherd's not there?" And he goes, "Oh, he'll be there." I said, "But what if he's not?" He goes, "He'll be there." And that's all I could get out of it. Well, we drive down the road for, however far, and there's a German Shepherd lying in the grass. And so we turned right and we found our friend's house. That's character. Okay. Doesn't mean great, bad, good. It's who that dog is. He's going to be there. He's predictable. All right. Well, so are you and I for the most part. Now, here's what I want to particular focus on. There's all sorts of typology tests and tests out there that show people's styles. You got the Myers-Briggs and you got the Enneagram and you got all these things. You take this snapshot and it's going to say, you have a tendency to, when in conflict, do A, B, or C, or you have a tendency to, and it's kind of characteristically until you change how you're going to show up. Well, that's us. All right. Well, newsflash, our tendencies aren't always so productive, fruitful, helpful, or stellar. Sometimes we will have tendencies that come from our temperaments. We also have tendencies that come out of our conflicts or our injuries or our traumas. And so we will have default tendencies in the way that we tend to operate that don't really service us well in all areas of life. Now, there's a lot of different systems, some better than others. Karen Horney, who was a famous psychoanalyst out of the British school back in the middle of the early middle of the last century. And basically, she just had this very simple but really powerful kind of typology. She said there were kind of three different tendencies that are consistent that people tend to have. Now, here's the problem. All three of those tendencies would be good for all of us to have. If we have the agility and the facility and the faculties to be able to choose which one is appropriate for the moment. But until we grow to that place, we're going to kind of operate on our default pattern. You open up your word processor and a document's going to come up and it's going to default to a certain font, right? That's what it chooses by default. Now you can get above that and say, that's not the best font for this letter, and you can change. It's a little bit kind of in a rough analogy what we're talking about here. So here's Horney's three tendencies. She will say that you are either a moving towards person, a moving against person, or a moving away person. All right. Now, particularly, let's just take where that tends to kind of fall out problematically sometimes, as well as an opportunity, but also in the context of conflict. So you take some people, they get into a disagreement, a conflict, or a challenge with a person. What they'll do is if the person disagrees or pushes, hard or something, and they're a moving towards person, to them, joining is the way out of conflict. So what does that look like? In not a good way? Okay, you're right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. Well, let's do it your way. Yeah, okay. That's fine. Because joining and being together for them is safety, and succumbing and putting the ears back and submitting. That's a characteristic style. Now, that's a very good way to operate in many, many situations. In some situations, it's not. If you're with a controlling person or a self-centered person or somebody that doesn't want to do something that's good or ethical or moral or even good for you, but it's conflictual, and your tendency is to, anytime there's a conflict, I'm just going to join and make peace. Watch that. Be aware that when you pull up the word processor, you're going to default to that font of, okay, I'll agree with you, anything to make peace. All right. Not good in some situations. Got to be aware that that's your tendency, and to be careful to not do it by default, but to do it by choice when appropriate. Moving towards. Second one, moving against. Some people immediately in a conflict, they'll just push harder. They just push against, move against, because they're more aggressively in doubt or defensive or whatever it is. Whoops. And that tends to be their default. Well, if we're persuasive and sort of like a, Enneagram 8 type, if you're into that, you kind of, you sort of push and persuade. That's a stupid way to operate in a lot of conflicts, because we're going to shut people down. We're going to drive them away. If they're a moving towards type, they're just going to join us and we hadn't resolved anything. So moving against all the time, immediately, and pushing, not always the good default pattern. Okay. If you got a teenager, watch out. Because if you're moving against, you're going to butt heads or you're going to crush them. And neither one of those is a good way to raise a teenager or resolve a lot of marital conflict or even complete a sale. Okay. So sometimes we want to move against. If somebody's coming with something hurtful, evil, destructive, aggressive, sometimes we want to set a limit and step into it and say, no, 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 I don't like that. No, I'm not going to do that. Stop that. I'm not going to allow that behavior. There is a time for moving against, but not always. If it's your tendency, your pattern, sometimes maybe the German Shepherd would be better off to go down the road because there's a dog food company having a free buffet that day. Might be good one day to not do your tendency. And then the last one is the moving away. And sometimes if there's anything, well, we'll just kind of shrink back and be quiet and not talk. We won't move towards and agree and make peace. We won't move against. Just sort of go quiet, detached, go into the other room, unplug, go into the garage and work on your woodworking, or go read your phone, or not call the person. And there's a moving away from conflict where it tend to be conflict avoidant, for example, or challenge avoidant. There's a new opportunity, a risk. Hey, let's go skiing. No, or you don't return that call or whatever. Moving away from something that's uncomfortable. Sometimes moving away is smart. There's a proverb that says the prudent person sees danger and hides themselves. Okay, you move away. And it says the simple or the naive. One of my favorite verses, Proverbs 23 something, I think it's 4. The prudent will keep going instead of move away from danger. God has given you all three of these as capacities. Might have a predominant style. That's okay, but is it done default or is it done by choice? And if you're a moving towards person, you got to integrate some moving against and some moving away parts. If you're moving against person, sometimes you got to shut up and move towards somebody with love, compassion, empathy, or sometimes you better drop it and get away from that fight and move away. And sometimes if you're a moving away person, it might be good to show up. So just look at your automatic tendencies and say, my first impulse is to, and then hit pause and say, is that the best way to be? Okay. Check your tendencies, be aware of them. It is a wise thing to do. And sometimes in talking with people, they're going into something, and I'll find myself saying, I think this is a helpful thing to say, I got to warn you, you have a tendency to, in situations like this, make them aware of it. I'm trying to highlight it so it's in their awareness and they can maybe quarantine themselves against that.